It's time for the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is the voice of the working class, Rick Smith. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So as I said, not shocking. There's nothing breaking news today about Trump pleading not guilty. But what is interesting is the charges. I mean, for me, the fact that there's no seditious conspiracy, there's no treason, there's none of the stuff, the big ticket stuff that you would have expected, because you got a couple of people who in that crowd of, 1,078 is Trump's number. Of the number of people who have come through because of January 6th. He is now number 1,078, I believe. But here to share some thoughts on the indictments and maybe give us some of the prosecutor view of how this might go down. I've asked our good friend, former Alabama Senator Doug Jones, to come talk with us. Doug, thanks for taking time for us.
Always great to be with you, Rick. How you doing tonight?
I am good. I'm looking at this, and there's so many questions here. There's so much. So much on this plate. I want to get into the charges though right away because, they're, for most people, I don't think most people know what these charges are. Can you explain, in legal terms that someone like me could understand what these charges are and what they mean?
Sure. Well, look, they're actually fairly simple. I mean, when you really go down to it, and people need to think back about the January 6th committee and all the evidence that they've heard from so many people, because so much of this evidence, Rick, is going to be the same witnesses, the same folks, the Cassie Hutchinsons, the Mike Pences of the world, other people who came forward and talked about those November, December meetings, and what Eastman and Clark and all these and Giuliani said and did. So what has been charged was what is, I think, the most obvious charges out of this, in the sense of the evidence, not what you could, incitement of riot and sedition and all, but the most obvious ones after you heard the January 6th committee is a conspiracy to obstruct a proceeding. That is the main thing that we go here. Count one is, let's see what it says. Violation of Title 18 is 371. That's just basically defrauding the United States. Count two is a part and parcel of that. That is a conspiracy to obstruct an official proceeding. That is simply obstructing and impeding the proceeding to certify the certification of the electoral vote. Count three is the attempt to corruptly obstruct, impede an official proceeding. Everything that they're doing, including the fourth one, and that's one that I want to talk about a little bit more in a second if we get a chance, and that's the one to deny people their rights, the right to vote and to have their votes counted. An interesting theory on that I think has ramifications for the future. But the other three are clearly directed at every effort that Trump and his unnamed co-conspirators went through to try to stop the certification of the election. And you got to remember, Rick, you don't have to succeed in doing that, although they did for a period of a number of hours. Everything they did led to that insurrection, led to a work stoppage of the Senate and the Congress.
Yep.
And ultimately, it was not until the wee hours of the morning of January 7th where they finally certified the election. So it's really when two people or more agree to commit a criminal act and take steps in furtherance of that act. And it's laid out pretty well in this indictment.
Yeah, and look, if they could have gotten to Mike Pence and they could have hung him in the gallows there, they would have succeeded.
They would have ultimately, again, there was an obstruction. It just wasn't a permanent obstruction. Okay, they didn't just completely stop it but they did obstruct it. They delayed it. And they succeeded. I don't want people to think that what is alleged was a conspiracy that the objects didn't succeed. the objects of this conspiracy actually did succeed for a period of time. They ultimately, ultimately weren't successful, but they did succeed for a period of time.
No, it's incredible, and because as I was reading the charges initially, I'm going, well, this doesn't sound all that bad, until you start looking at that. These are serious. They're still serious crimes. They're not what I had hoped for. They're not the seditious conspiracy and the ones that I think most lay lawyers would go, that's what we should be going after. But this is serious stuff that could end up with serious time. So of the cases that are out there, and because the classified documents thing is one, the DA in Manhattan is another, and then this, because we've got 3 not guilty pleas so far. Which, as a prosecutor, do you think is the most damning for the former president?
Well, look, there's a difference, I guess, between most damning and most likely to succeed. I think the most likely to succeed is a far different calculation that's very difficult, I think, to say right now, because it involves jury selections, it involves discovery and the challenge of evidence that we haven't seen yet. Remember, January 6th, we didn't see the defendant, Donald Trump, and his lawyers challenging the evidence, cross-examining witnesses and all. So in terms of success, it's very difficult. But in my view, the most damning thing here is in my view, clearly the indictment that came out this week. I mean, that goes directly. And again, every defendant is presumed not guilty. And that's a legal presumption, Rick. That's not something to be taken lightly, okay? But the charges go directly at the heart of our democracy. And what these folks were doing, if a jury believes, is to subvert that democratic process, just to completely destroy our institutions of government in order for Donald Trump to stay in power. And that's a real threat to our democracy. So in terms of damning, I think clearly this is the most damning allegations that we have seen.
No, because I mean the reality is this is a conspiracy. Because I remember saying again, I'm not a lawyer, but I've watched a lot on TV, and you hear about the RICO Act and all of this stuff with all of this conspiracy stuff. It seems like this was going on. You had all these unnamed co-conspirators. You had people saying, "Hey, we can use the military to put down any protests against the insurrection by using the Insurrection Act." Hey, we've got this all these alternative electors that we've now created, and we've brought the web on this is enormous. And you've got the guy who came up with the theory of Pence can just not certify, and we can change it. I mean, it really is remarkable.
But here's an interesting thing, though, Rick, and we don't know what all the evidence that the special counsel has gathered on that. But yes, we have seen those allegations. We've seen all that. But in order for there to be a charge of any conspiracy like this, they have to do more than just simply talk about it in the theory. Hey, we might can do this. We might can do that. What about seizing the machines like Mike Flint talked about? You can throw out all kind of ideas, but you've got to take steps in furtherance of the conspiracy. Those are called overt acts. And you've got to take a couple of overt acts in furtherance of that conspiracy in order to meet the elements of the crime, to prevent the very thing that Donald Trump is saying, to prevent First Amendment rights from being criminalized, where somebody just sits around and says, "Damn, I think we should just seize the voting machines." Yeah, well, I do too. Well, if they don't do anything in furtherance of that, no crime has been committed.
Right.
Okay. And I think that there is, what you're seeing here is the old line prosecutor rule is to go with your strength, go with what is simple, what people can understand, and it carries significant penalties to it. Yeah. Make no mistake, it carries significant penalties to it.
No, this is one of those things where you talk about the overt acts. I looked at January 6th. I know that a number of states sent fake electors. Someone put all this together. In my state of Pennsylvania, there were a number of people, notable people, which is former Congress people, very, very high level Republican operatives who put their name on a document. Now, of course, here in our state had a caveat that, well, if the official ones aren't, we're the other ones. But still, there was some coordination that went into this.
And remember, the Attorney General of Michigan has brought a lawsuit already for fake electors. We still are looking at a fake elector lawsuit and potential criminal charges in Georgia. I'm not sure what's going on in Pennsylvania, but I think Arizona has begun to look at that now. So we may not see the ending of that. But here's the other piece of that, is that you also may not see any direct involvement by Donald Trump in those, which would not, my guess is that they would have charged Trump in Michigan if they'd have had direct information about that. So what was going on at the time was just stunning. And it also is, I think, a very serious foreshadowing of issues that we're going to face in 2024.
No, it really is. I mean, if you'd have gone to Netflix and written this script, they'd have laughed you, 15 years ago, they'd have laughed you right out of the place. To think that we're in the moment that we're in. I mean, you were a federal prosecutor, right?
Yep.
Could you ever have imagined, us indicting a president? Look, there are a lot of times where you look back at a president's time in office and you go, oh, they did this. I look at the Reagan years and Iran-Contra and a bunch of other things. And you go, how did they not get indicted? But we've always gone, well, let sleeping dogs lie. I look at this guy, the crimes are so egregious and he's so... the documents thing is a perfect example for me. Had he just given them back, I think it would have ended right there. But it was all of the stuff that went along with it, the bravado, I just think he's his own worst enemy, and I hope he violates the judge's order, and I hope he keeps talking because we need that.
Rick, he said something today. I wasn't sure if it was before or after. But he said he to put it in his context, he was saying that he was being persecuted, going political enemies, political folks going after their opposition, whatever, weaponizing. That was his context. But he did use a phrase. He said, this should not be happening in the United States. And I agree with that. The United States of America should never been put in a position where we are now, where a man who held the highest office in this country is now facing a series of very, very serious indictments for his own conduct. And the people that are testifying, those that are bringing forth this evidence, the prosecutors are either independent or they're in various jurisdictions. But the prosecutors can't testify, Rick. That's the thing. Every lawyer says what they say is not evidence. Their arguments, nothing is evidence. The only evidence are going to be the documents and the witnesses. And we've seen the witnesses in January 6th, and it was Trump's own inner circle. So, yes, it's one thing I completely agree, not with his context, but the United States of America should never have been in this position.
No, I agree with you. You're listening to the Rick Smith Show. We're here with former Alabama Senator Doug Jones talking about the breaking news. Trump pled not guilty again today. But I wanted to get your thoughts on Representative Mike Waltz, the Republican from Florida, who he believes that Trump should get special consideration, because he was president. And, this kind of stuff shouldn't be prosecuted for a former president because, he should get special consideration. I mean, isn't this the ultimate in no one's above the law? Isn't this kind of that moment?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, look, getting elected president does not give one a get out of jail free card at all. And it should not. Imagine what can happen if someone committed offenses. What would happen if all of a sudden the Constitution said if you're the president of the United States, you are just basically immune from state or federal criminal activity. Good Lord.
Well, but here's the thing, Doug. I mean, if let's say he wins in 2024, and there is a chance that could happen, can't he just pardon himself? Can't he stop the DOJ from
Of course.
pursuing? I mean, couldn't he do exactly what you're saying?
Well, no, he can't give himself immunity to not prosecute. There's a difference between abusing your pardon privilege and just immunity from prosecution, which is what Waltz was saying. Yes, I think there's a legal question about that, but quite frankly, it appears if you just read the letter of the Constitution, he could probably do that, at least for the federal violations. If he gets convicted in New York, if he happens to get convicted, if charges are brought in the state of Georgia, that doesn't apply to him. He cannot pardon himself for anything but federal crimes, not state crimes.
So, I've been reading a lot about this, and you as a former prosecutor, maybe you understand the defense a little bit better than I do. They're talking about a delusion defense. What are they talking about when they say, Trump's the legal team's teasing out this delusion defense? Is it just that he's not all right there? He has a different belief, and you can't prosecute him for this. How does that work?
Well, it is basically saying he is so narcissistic that he was delusional in believing that he actually won the election. Because there were, according to the indictment and evidence that we saw from January 6th, there were any number of his inner circle that was telling him he lost the election. The vice president apparently was telling him he lost it. His White House counsel was. But then you had a group of lawyers, which by the way, Rick, is another whole embarrassment for the legal profession, that all of these unindicted co-conspirators are damn lawyers. We catch enough crap, okay? And and here we've got this literally wacko legal theories, but they present some delusional defense that he really believed it. I think that only can go so far. And according to the indictment, he may have acknowledged he lost several times, and it gets to a point to where the delusional defense or whatever they're trying to say, there is anyone would be delusional to believe it. Okay.
Yeah, but here's the thing, and this is the weird part of this, and I agree with you. I don't know how you can look at 2020 and think that Trump won, yet, and I point to this CNN poll that finds 69% of Republicans and Republican-leaning voters say Joe Biden's win in 2020 was not legitimate, and that's up from 63% last year. So it seems like maybe Trump's delusional. Seems like 69% of the Republican Party, they're coming along for the trip.
Well, remember, I think that's true, but there's a part of that I think you got to separate a candidate, a president who has really spent $1 gazillion, had the best pollsters around with him, had to file 60 lawsuits, okay, that he is monitoring every day, versus people who are just feeding off of Fox News, feeding off of headlines and Breitbart and Steve Bannon and those kind of folks. And they don't want to believe that their guy lost. They don't want to believe that Donald Trump lost. They want to believe that there had to be some other reason that he lost. And they've not done the due diligence. They've not done the work. They hear Democrats saying XYZ, and they see certain folks in the media, but they don't believe that. But there's a big difference from where Donald Trump is sitting in the Oval Office, getting this information real time, every day, very specific, getting updates on the lawsuits, what's being said, what's being done, okay, and literally all of this crazy stuff just being thrown at him. And sure, I am absolutely convinced he wanted to believe him, but there were certain things that they, for instance, that they wanted to do, but they decided not to do because of Jeffrey Clark was saying he should be the attorney general. Okay. And everybody else is saying if that happens, everybody resigns. So that didn't happen. So it's not like he was totally irrational. And I think you're going to see some of that too. Yeah. And I think that there will be some evidence where he acknowledged at least from what I see in the indictment, there will be some testimony that he at least acknowledged that he lost it. And here's two things, Rick, and I don't want to dominate this, but I want you to remember two things. One, in the first impeachment, in the call to Zelensky, he was trying to get Zelensky to open up a criminal investigation. And what he was saying is, just open it up. All you got to do is open it up. We'll take it from there. Okay? In other words, let me run with whatever that means. Truth be damned. Okay? Validity be damned. In this case, he said the same thing. He was telling Bill Barr, just say it's corrupt, and me and my folks in the Congress will take it from there. That to me is such an admission that folks that are his supporters and people in Congress ought to look at and say, this guy's been playing us.
Yeah, no, that's an excellent point. That's an excellent point.
Just playing us. He had planned on playing us all along, and for his own personal benefit.
I got to tell you, the hope is that all of this comes out, as I've been saying all along through all of this. It's, for me, what's important is what is said under oath when they go into that courtroom with the judge and the book in the hand and all of that. Not what Rudy Giuliani said in the parking lot of the Four Seasons Landscaping Company, but what actually gets presented into evidence. Lastly, before I let you go, I got to get your thoughts on, you were a senator from Alabama. I hated to see you lose to the dumbest guy in the U.S. Senate. This thing that he's dug in on in screwing our military, and I got to tell you, it makes no sense to me why he would take such a hard line on getting the promotions to our military folks, leaving the Marine Corps without a commandant, all kinds of craziness. This makes no sense to me. Can you explain it?
No, I can't. Other than his grandstanding and playing political games with it, he seems to enjoy the limelight, despite the fact that he's catching hell for it. It is unpatriotic. It is un-American. It is an assault on the military in general, but it more particularly is an assault on the women in the military and the spouses of military men. It is one of those things that is it is unlike anything that we've had in our history. Rick, a lot of people don't really, I think, fully understand that so many generals and flag officers in our military have to be confirmed by the United States Senate. It's not just something that happens within the Army. They have to be confirmed. And people are retiring, they have to leave the military at a certain point. And so those are vacancies. Those generals, let's say a 4-star general, well, that cannot be filled right now by the 3-star general that is set to move up. And that means that the 2-star general that's waiting to be a 3-star general can't move up. The 1-star can't move up. Folks cannot. It's like I said this a minute ago when I was doing something on social media. It's like a log jam. You got a couple of logs rolling down the river. They get to a narrow spot and they jam up. Well, all of a sudden, everything that's coming behind them gets backed up and backed up and backed up, and pretty soon it's like a beaver dam that the river is not functioning the way it's supposed to be. That's what's happening here, and he's doing it because of the Department of Defense's stand that they took following the Dobbs decision, that basically said if you are a woman in the military, or if you are the spouse, a female spouse, and you like access to reproductive services, including abortion, that are not provided in the state we have assigned you, okay? Not the state of your choice, but the state that we've assigned you. We will pay, we'll give you paid leave. We will pay for your travel. We will not pay for the services, and there's a big difference. This is not against the law, despite what Tuberville says, but it is affecting morale. It is affecting the ability to retain lawyers. It is setting back our ability to recruit women in our military. It's setting it back years because we've worked so hard to get women into the military. It is unpatriotic. And here's the thing. Remember, Rick, you're old enough, I think, to remember Walter Cronkite during the Iranian hostage crisis, okay?
Yep.
Well, every sign off on the news during the Iranian hostage crisis back in the late 70s and through 1980. Walter Cronkite would say, and that's the way it is, day 147 of the Iranian hostage crisis. Well, we're starting something on social media where every day we're going to give the number of days that Tuberville is having his un-American assault on our military. Today is day 147. Tomorrow we'll do something for day 148. Well, we also got a petition. I got a petition going on my PAC, the Right Side of History PAC, that we're going to deliver to him when they come back in September. It's unbelievable.
It really is. And I guess if there's a positive thing that comes out of this, we now all know that, all these years that we weren't paying attention, the Senate actually has a job that it does and has done very well until this moment, until you put stupid people into positions of power, and it's infuriating. But Doug, I appreciate
it in a bipartisan way, Rick. Done it in a bipartisan, unanimous consent way.
Absolutely, it was nonpartisan, and yet here we are. But Doug, I appreciate the time. As always, incredible stuff. I wish you the best. I'm gonna at some point say you need to be running for Senate to get that guy out, but not now. I appreciate your time. Thanks so much.
All right, buddy. Take care.
Good stuff. Our good friend Doug Jones. Seriously, I don't know, Alabama, how you took probably the smartest guy I know and replaced him with the dumbest guy. But that's what you did. Quick break. Right back. Stick around.
We are AFGE. We support our nation's military and our nation's veterans. We protect our nation's borders and provide services to our nation's seniors across the country and here in Washington, D.C. The American Federation of Government Employees. We work for America.
At the Rick Smith Show, we believe that media today is almost entirely controlled by corporate greed. So we have now 24-hour news channels. But instead of 24 hours of news, what we get is 1 hour repeated 24 times, and with tons of commercials creating obscene amounts of profits. Information once presented as a public service has now become a private commodity. So when lies make money, lies are what we get. We get a corporate-controlled rage machine feeding us anger and hate, trying to convince us that our problems are right, left, or red, blue, when they are and always have been up, down, the wealthiest 1% versus the rest of us. Our goal is to be an alternative to that machine, not as a news show with a fancy journalist out front, but as a talk show run by a union truck driver and a team of working-class heroes just like you. Everything we do, both what we get right and what we get wrong, is dedicated to advancing the interests of America's working families. No corporate ad buys, no think tanks, no focus groups, no talking points. We are media by working people, for working people. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you back here next time.